Last month, I showed a client a stunning piece of property with incredible wine country views. And the price? $650,000. Now it seems like a big steal, right? Then we discovered the true cost of getting the driveway there alone would be over $500,000. So today, I'm going to show you how to avoid some of those expensive mistakes like this and really uncover the secrets of finding the perfect piece of land in Sonoma County. Now, after helping dozens of clients navigate this process, I'll share exactly what you need to know, including the one question that could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in a land purchase. So before I tell you which are the essential factors you need to know when choosing a lot, first, let's discuss something about building in Healdsburg that I don't think a lot of people actually know about. Just last month, I was working with some clients who found what seemed to be the perfect lot off West Dry Creek. Stunning vineyard views, a great sun exposure, and it was priced at $850,000. That seems reasonable for our market, right? But here's the catch that most buyers don't realize. That list price was just the beginning of their investment journey before they actually break ground on a piece of land. When you're building in wine country, especially in our prized rural areas, you're essentially creating your own mini infrastructure system. And believe me, I've seen how these additional costs can catch even the most prepared buyers by surprise. Let me give you a real-time example. In downtown Healdsburg, connecting to city utilities might cost $15,000 or $20,000 to tie in. But just 10 minutes out to the beautiful Dry Creek Valley, and you're suddenly looking at potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in infrastructure. Now that includes wells, septic systems, electric hookups, driveways, grading, and other requirements that might be required for fire code. That's why today I'm bringing you insights from a number of people, including Simon Fairweather, one of Sonoma County's most experienced custom home builders, to wind back exactly really what matters in finding land. Now, Simon, for example, has built over 200 homes in Sonoma County over the last 33 years. And that's from straightforward flat lots to complex hillside builds with incredible 360-degree views. Now, I'll walk you through exactly what to look for and what questions to ask, and most importantly, how to avoid those costly mistakes we've seen others make. The key is understanding that each property comes with its own unique set of challenges and opportunities. No two lots are the same. What works on a lot for Matheson won't necessarily apply to a property on West Side Road, and that's exactly how we're going to break things down here today. Let me walk you through what I call the $1 million factors. The essential elements that can make or break your purchase here out of a lot in Sonoma County. Before we dive in, I want you to remember one thing. Every property tells a story, and understanding these factors will help you read that story correctly. As we've mentioned, infrastructure is critical, so when choosing a lot in Sonoma County, one of the first decisions you'll need to make is between rural and urban properties. That's in town or out in the country. And while that might seem straightforward, there are some crucial factors that can significantly impact both your budget on the property and your lifestyle. Now, any lot within city limits is going to generally be easily connected or connectable to city utilities, which means you've got ready access already to power, water, gas, sewer. It's convenient. You move in, everything's already there, hooked up, and you're ready to go. Now, for example, we actually have a listing at 1000 Borel Road in Healdsburg, and it's exactly that. It's ready to build, easy access to power, city water, city sewer, all on the edge of the lot. And this is a really unique property because it has 3/4 of an acre with great views of the city. But that's not always the case with city services. When you venture into our beautiful rural properties, that's where things can get a little more complicated. Some rural properties have some infrastructure in place already, but there are many that I call rural properties from scratch. Properties that you really need to bring everything in because you're essentially building your own mini utility system out there. There's nothing there, it's just land. And that can be attractive for some of you looking to go off the grid, but it does come with its own set of challenges. And let me tell you, based on recent projects we've worked on in Sonoma County, these costs can really add up. Just extending power to a property without a power pole nearby could easily cost you $50,000 to $100,000 or more, depending on how far you're bringing the power from. Water? Well, now, not a play on words, you do need to worry about. A well is generally how you're going to access water if you don't have access to municipal water. Now, the cost of this could range anywhere from $35,000 to $85,000. And don't even get me started on septic systems. Now, the cost of a septic system can be $65,000 all the way up to $200,000+, depending on the type of system that's designed and the challenges that the lot may have. Now, when you see this beautiful lot and it's listed $200,000 below some properties that seem to be comparable, you will often quickly discover that that's due to the difference in infrastructure. While you may not notice that in a picture, it can make a huge difference in how buildable that property is. With that said, it's not always about the bottom line. Sometimes when you're looking to create your perfect vineyard or rural setting, it's really about what the lot has to offer and truly making something one of a kind. And the budget may be a bit more subjective, but it's always important to know what you're getting into at least, even if the budget allows for what you want to do. But first, before we go into any more detail, let me know in the comments below what you think about buying a lot in Sonoma County. Would you give it a try? Or do you think buying an existing home is a much safer choice? Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get new videos with everything you need to know about living or moving to Sonoma County. Now let's get back to water sources. As a wine country region, we have some very specific requirements that you need to understand, especially when looking at those rural properties. Here in Sonoma County, the regulations are clear. You need at least 1 gallon per minute per dwelling. And if you're thinking about adding that guest house or ADU, that means that's 2 units and you'll need to bump that to 2 gallons per minute as a bare minimum just to be considered a buildable lot. These requirements become even more stringent in water-scarce areas like West County, where the testing standards are notably higher. For properties that don't have water, the most common solution is drilling a well, particularly in areas like Dry Creek Valley or Sonoma Valley, where there is abundance of water. However, up until recently, the county had put a ban on drilling new non-agricultural wells. Although that ban is currently relaxed for now, there's certainly no guarantees what that holds for the future. Based on recent projections, wells can cost between $35,000 and $85,000, including testing and drilling, depending on how deep you have to go. While if you're on a city lot, you very likely will be able to hook up to their municipal water source, which is also a great option. However, there are areas all over the county that have notoriously little water and poor well production. One of these areas is right here in Healdsburg off Mill Creek, and other areas out in Occidental and West County have really a hard time pulling water from the ground from a well, and you may have to resort even to things like pulling water from a spring, which is all regulated, but it does limit the amount of water you can pull, so that starts to impact that 1 to 2 gallon minimum requirement as we talked about. As mentioned, if you can get municipal water, it's certainly going to be the simpler approach. But again, that brings you in town. The connection fees for city water, depending on how far you're running the water lines, can be $10,000 to $15,000, much cheaper than drilling a well. Something crucial that I've learned from years in this market is that you need to be extremely cautious of any property without proven water access. You truly cannot live without a water access, and so having that in place is critical when finding a right piece of property. It is not uncommon for people to get into a project only to realize that it could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to find that water source and develop it. Now, that is not a welcome surprise when you're just starting the journey of building on a property. Now let's get into septics, what we call the underground challenges. This is something that I discuss with every client up front when looking at rural property. And believe me, it can be a game changer in your decision-making process. For our rural properties, you will need a septic system because you cannot usually connect to a public sewer system. But not every lot can even support a septic system. Here in Sonoma County, we have very specific requirements that are absolutely non-negotiable in most cases. What fascinates me is how much your soil conditions, lot characteristics can dictate what's possible. For instance, if your soil doesn't meet minimum requirements, you may not even be able to install a septic system. And even if you can, it's going to be heavily determinant on how many bedrooms you can have. One very big misconception is that a septic system dictates how many bathrooms you can have in a house. Well, actually, it dictates how many bedrooms can be in the house. Let me break down the 4-step process you'll need to go through for a septic system based on current costs I'm seeing. First, you'll start with a soil investigation, which can run a few $1,000s. Then, potentially, depending on those results, there's a groundwater testing and a pre-perk test. And that's where you'll determine how well your soil absorbs that water, which can cost approximately another $2,500 or so. And you'll finally need to work on septic designs with the county, probably another $5,000. All in all, you're easily at $10,000 just to determine what kind of system you can install and if you can install a system at all. While many sellers may conduct what's called a pre-perk test to determine approximately how many bedrooms the property will support, it's not a guarantee. A septic engineer will be able to do some analysis during escrow to give you an idea of what that lot may support, but there's always a bit of unknowns when it comes to septics until it's truly fully approved and perked by the county. But this can take quite a bit of time. Certain lots that require groundwater testing can only be done during certain parts of the year based on average rainfalls, and this can add to that timing element to even determine what kind of septic system can be placed on a property. Now, if you're looking at properties within cities, you'll most likely be dealing with city sewer connections. While this may seem pretty straightforward, don't forget to budget for both the connection fee and the actual cost of construction to put the main sewer line in. Besides, even with city sewer access, you need to verify the capacity of the main line, otherwise you may be on the hook for upgrading it, especially if you're planning on a larger home or multiple units. I've seen several cases where buyers assumed city services meant unlimited capacity, only to discover that there were going to be costly upgrades associated with their building plans. That's actually why I always want to encourage my clients to get these estimates as part of the escrow process to ensure that there are no more surprises than necessary, as there are already a lot of unknowns when taking on a large build project. Now let's get into access and driveways. After the 2017 Tubbs fire here in Sonoma County, the access and driveways have become one of the most critical aspects of properties, development, and fire codes on these prized hillsides areas. When we're evaluating lots, driveway costs can range dramatically, starting at $100,000 or more, and potentially reaching seven figures in some cases, depending on the engineering involved and the length of the driveway. Now, let me break down why there's such a huge discrepancy in those costs and such a huge variance. First, let's talk about length. A 200-foot driveway on the flat ground in Sonoma County or Healdsburg might cost you about $30,000. But take that same length and put it on a hillside property, and you could easily be talking about $250,000 with all the additional engineering and requirements that go into it. Then there's the soil type as well. And in Healdsburg, we have what's called expanding clay soil. These can be tricky and often require even additional engineering, which can, again, add to the cost factor. The slope's another major factor. Steeper driveways need specialized construction techniques, often requiring additional grading or retaining walls to safely comply with local regulations and fire codes. Now, safety is always paramount, where they want to make sure that you can get out in the case of an emergency and fire. After what we've experienced with these wildfires, these guidelines became absolute necessities. For example, your driveway can't be too steep. There are specific grade limitations that must be met. You must have turnouts every 200 feet so that fire trucks can pass each other, plus a turnaround area that can handle a full-size fire truck. And for your own convenience, you'll need adequate turnaround space for larger vehicles. Believe me, you do not want to be backing down a long driveway every time you have to get a delivery. Something I've learned from the years of helping clients in some of these properties is, despite their stunning views and apparent potential, they physically just cannot support these required specifications. The minimum width required often surprises buyers, and meeting these standards can come with extraordinary expense if the topography is not already conducive to it. My most important piece of advice is to talk to a contractor ahead of time as part of your due diligence, particularly when looking at properties that are not flat and easily buildable. I've seen too many clients fall in love with a beautiful view property only to discover it just cannot accommodate their dream. It's absolutely heartbreaking, and it is avoidable with proper due diligence. Now, power and internet are other factors to consider when looking at lots. In today's world, this isn't just about keeping the lights on, it's about maintaining your quality of life. especially if you're planning on working from home. Power and internet are necessities. Let me start with some good news about the power in Healdsburg. We're quite fortunate here that our municipal power company, Healdsburg Electric, provides some of the most reliable and cost-effective services in Sonoma County. However, there are important electrical considerations you need to keep in mind when choosing your lot. The distance from existing power lines, again, particularly with rural properties, is absolutely critical because it's largely what's going to determine the cost of bringing power to the property. If your lot is far from the nearest power source, extending those lines can get quickly expensive. If your lot is far from the nearest power source, extending those electrical lines can get expensive very quickly. I've seen costs range from a few $1,000s to hundreds of thousands of dollars just to bring power to the property, depending on the distance and the terrain. This is, again, critically important on hillsides and areas heavily wooded without power poles nearby. An interesting trend I'm seeing more and more often from my clients on remote lots is that they're considering going completely off the grid with solar panels as a primary or supplementary power source. If this is of interest to you, please be sure to look at your solar exposure. Those southern facing lots get more sunlight, which is ideal for solar production. And if there aren't natural gas lines available, propane is a viable alternative. Just keep in mind that propane tanks require regular refills and maintenance. And there are specific local regulations about tank placement and safety requirements, but it is a suitable replacement for natural gas. Now, let's talk about internet connectivity. This has become a huge factor in property decisions, particularly with more people working from home. If you're looking at lots in any city, then you're in luck. Comcast, AT&T, Sonic all offer great high-speed options, and in some neighborhoods have fiber connectivity. Sea Ranch is one example of a rural area even that has fiber connectivity. For our rural properties, especially in the hills, Starlink has been an absolute game changer. I've had several clients successfully using it, but there is one catch. You need to have a clear view of the northern sky. Some areas can also access line of sight providers like Valley Internet, which can be a great option depending on your location, although they are becoming redundant with more and more access to Starlink. It's really helped eliminate some of the internet challenges on these rural properties. Something crucial I always tell my clients is to test their cell phone service as well while they're on the property. I mean, actually walk around and make some calls, see if they're not going to drop, and if you can live with that. Cell service can vary dramatically depending on your carrier and depending on the area, whether you're in a valley or on a hill even. I've seen properties where you get perfect reception in the front yard and get nothing in the backyard. So this is definitely something you want to know before making a final decision. Now let's move on to actually getting closer to building, the soil and the foundations. Now soil, as I've mentioned, impacts a lot of elements of the build. And one thing we've learned from our local builder, Simon Fairweather, is, as he always says, the soil under your feet can either be your best friend or your worst enemy when it comes to building costs. Something that often surprises my clients is how soil types can literally double your foundation cost. This is why we need to carefully evaluate several key factors before you commit to buying a lot. For instance, if we find clay soil on your property, which is common around here, you might need special remediation techniques like deep foundations or piers to prevent any movement in your foundation. I've seen cases where this can significantly increase the cost of construction because of the need for more robust foundation systems depending on the soil. Anecdotally, on my own house, I had to put piers as deep as 16 feet. That adds significant cost to a foundation, and I've heard stories of people having to go even much further than that if they're building on clay soil. You also need to consider that properties with a history of soil movement or previous fill work will also likely need extra attention. These situations often require additional engineering assessments and remediation efforts to make sure that you're building on a solid foundation. In many cases, especially with challenging soil conditions, you'll need to bring in a civil engineer. Their expertise is crucial for designing a foundation that can handle your specific soil conditions. Though this does add cost to your project, it is necessary. Now, if you're looking at that flat land, you're typically looking at lower foundation costs since you'll need less excavation and grading work. But for those of you that will fall in love with that cliffside view, it is possible. Just be aware that there are these different types of foundation systems that will increase the cost. These might include portions of the foundation being cantilevered over open spaces or retaining walls, extremely deep piers, and all kinds of things that can add to the cost of construction. Some lots for sale will have a soils test if the seller has started the building process already, but oftentimes they won't have soils tests. However, many local architects and contractors will know the soil types, generally speaking, in different areas because they've built on areas nearby and will give you a good sense of what to expect. This includes soil classifications, whether it's clay soil, sandy, or a rocky area, which will again help determine ahead of time approximately what type of foundation you're going to need and what direction you may be headed in terms of foundation type and cost. When it comes to foundation types, you've got several options depending on what soil you end up with. I know this is a lot of information, but we have made things simple by putting everything into a 35-page ebook on buying a lot and building a home in Sonoma County. If you comment ebook in the comments below, we'll be sure to get you a free copy, which will help go into detail of what we're talking about. Now, let's shift gears and talk about how you can prepare to buy a lot, from the time and planning to the cost you may incur. Now let's start with the time and planning. Let me tell you something that often surprises our clients here in Sonoma County. Building your dream home isn't just about finding the perfect lot. It's about understanding the entire journey ahead. And believe me, timing is everything in construction. I've guided numerous clients through this process, and one of the first questions I always get is, how long will this really take? I want to be in by next summer. Well, let me break it down based on what I'm seeing in our current market. Firstly, you need to understand that the design phase alone can take 6 to 12 months or more, depending on who you've chosen to be your architect and your input in the design. This isn't just sketching out your dream home. It's actually working with an architect who understands the unique local requirements, selecting building materials that complement the aesthetic, and making countless decisions about every detail of your dream home to make sure you get it right. Something I've learned from working with local builders is that construction can be as quick as a year once you break ground, but it can easily span to 2 years or more for a complex project, and depending on how many changes you make along the way. And here's an insider tip. Weather plays a huge role. I always tell my clients to expect some delays for rain, especially, again, when you're building in more rural areas with tougher access. Now, something crucial that I've seen that catches many buyers off guard is the whole permitting process and timelines, which isn't a simple rubber stamp here in Sonoma County. Depending on your location and project complexity, you could be looking at several months just for permit approvals once you've got everything submitted. I recently had clients building out in Dry Creek Valley who needed to factor in additional time for agricultural setback requirements, something they had not considered initially. Another thing you need to consider is its own personal time commitment. When you're building in Healdsburg or anywhere here in Sonoma County, you're not just investing money, but you're also going to be investing a lot of your own time in the process to make sure it's done right and something that you're happy with at the end of the day. And building a home requires a lot of involvement and attention to detail. It's hard for those to try and manage and decide everything remotely, so you'll likely need to have regular meetings with your team. In my experience, most clients spend at least a few hours a week connecting with their architect, their builder, especially during some critical phases like the planning and finish selection phases. Now, these aren't just casual check-ins. These are serious discussions about window placement, how to maximize views, selecting material, which way doors should swing, and where living rooms should lay out with lighting and switches and outlets. There's a lot of factors that go into building a home. So whether you're starting with your contractor or your architect, give yourself at least 1 to 4 weeks for what I call the vision phase. This is where you really want to define what you want, all the things on the wish list. Plus, always build in some buffer time. Even though you have the perfect planning ahead, set up, and already outlined, things do not always go according to plan. For example, last year when I had clients building up in the hills, despite what they felt was perfect planning, they faced delays due to an unusually wet spring. The lesson? In wine country construction, flexibility isn't just helpful, it's going to be essential. Budgeting is going to be another crucial aspect that needs your time and attention. I always recommend that my clients establish what I call a reality-based budget. Factors like specialized material for fire safety, extra engineering on hillsides, and those particular finishes that you want to import from Italy all impact the bottom line. Something I've noticed while working on successful projects here are that it is absolutely crucial to set up monthly check-ins with your builder or your project manager to catch any potential issues both in timing and cost before they get out of hand. Now, there is one type of lot that can help with both the efficiency and cost elements, and those are the lots impacted by the fires. The simple reason is that the standards for septic systems aren't as stringent on those lots because they already had homes, and things will be grandfathered in. They likely already have a lot of the infrastructure in place because there was a house there previously. They also receive expedited timing from the county in terms of permit review, and even things like driveways likely already exist, again, from there being a house there previously, if your vision remotely fits what was there before. Now, regardless of what lot type you choose, a tip that has saved clients both time and stress is document everything. Keep a detailed record of all decisions, changes, and communications. I've seen how this simple practice can prevent misunderstandings and keep your budget on track and your timing on track. I know this might sound like a lot now, but you're not just building a house, you're creating your perfect wine country home. And trust me, when you're sitting on your deck or enjoying your beautiful backyard, watching the sunset over the vineyards or walking to town, you'll know it was all worth it. Now, speaking of enjoying your backyard, now let's talk about pools. In our climate, they're very popular. But what most people don't realize is a pool doesn't just cost $50,000 like it used to. They're usually $150,000 to $250,000 investments. And sometimes they're not even possible to build depending on setback requirements, soils, and where your leach field might be. So please look into that ahead of time as well during your due diligence if a pool is an absolute make or break for you. And across all elements of the budget, one safe rule is to always add a contingency percentage. Costs will go up, things will change inevitably throughout the process, even with the best of planning. It's prudent to add at least 10% as a contingency to your overall budget, upwards to 20% to really be on the safe side. And before we wrap this video up, I just want to emphasize something important. While these costs might seem a bit daunting, building your dream home in Sonoma County can be one of the most rewarding experiences when done right. The key is understanding what you're getting into from the start, and that's all we're trying to highlight here. It can absolutely be worthwhile to get exactly what you want in a home when you're having a hard time finding that in other people's visions. So there you have it, a complete guide on how to choose a lot. But remember, having someone who understands this market and knows how to navigate all these intricacies is absolutely essential. If you're serious about buying a lot here in Sonoma County, we can take you through every step of the process, as well as give you a list of access to ready-to-build lots and help connect you with the right subcontractors and consultants that will help guide you along the way. The perfect lot's out there, but success requires proper planning and expertise. Don't wait until it's too late to get a copy of our free 35-page ebook on building a home by commenting ebook in the comments below. Our team here is one of the top teams in Sonoma County, helping families buy and sell over $70 million worth of real estate in 2024. With us, you get inside access to the developers and the lots that are coming on the market, as well as some nice custom spec homes that may have done all the work for you already. And hey, before you go, if you liked this video, you'll love my video about what to know before coming to Sonoma County. So, see you on the next one.